People often whisper to one another that history is written by the victors, but they forget to add a crueler clause. The losers don't always die, sometimes. They are just holding their breath beneath the freezing ice. Forget those dry history lessons about medieval France, where kings ruled by law and faith. Rubbish. The truth is much more naked. Before God, that land belonged to the Merovingians, a bizarre bunch of kings with hair never cut, claiming to be the biological children of sea monsters, and viewing the throne as a magical charm. The Roman Church hated this half-man, half-god attitude to the bone, and so, boom, a political coup d'etat wrapped in the holy name of God. The king was shaved, thrown into a monastery, and this lineage was wiped off the map of power. A neat, clean ending, right? But life isn't that simple. If I told you that the death of that dynasty was just a play, that while mainstream historians nodded and said it's over, that mad bloodline silently flowed backward to the north, hiding within rocks carved with the Templar cross and sleeping peacefully under the eternal snows of Scandinavia? Welcome back, you curious souls, to Dark History. I am Zorro. Keep a cool head, because today we are not reading textbooks. We are going to dig up the ghosts that the Vatican thought they had buried forever. Look at this thing. Buried half deep in the bone-chilling cold of a forgotten Norwegian fjord is a granite slab. It does not belong here. It rises from the ground like a rotting finger pointing straight up at the high heavens. And on it, a scar, a splayed cross. If you are a dreamer, you would say it is the cross of the Knights Templar. If you are a skeptical historian, you would say it is just a prank of nature. But look closer. Those faint red streaks in the grooves of the rock. That isn't rust. That is red pigment. 700 years have passed, and it still beats like a weak heartbeat beneath the ice. The locals call it the Rock of the Whispering King. They say when the Arctic wind screams through the cracks in the stone, it doesn't howl. It speaks in dead languages. Today, I want you to feel that cold. Imagine it creeping through the soles of your shoes, prickling your flesh. Because right beneath our feet, buried not only in ice but in ancient royal bloodlines, is a secret that could cause the Vatican sleepless nights. The question that has haunted treasure hunters and annoyed old history professors. Was the bloodline of the Merovingians, the first Sorcerer Kings of France, really exterminated, or did they escape to the ends of the earth? Before we dig through the ice, let's rewind to a time when men grew long hair not because they were rock stars, but because it was the source of their power. The 5th century. Europe was a post-Roman ruin, and from those ashes, the house of Merovingian rose. They were unlike any king you know. They didn't rule by law. They ruled by mysticism. Their founder, Merovec. Legend has it his mother went swimming and, well, how should I put this? She had an intimate encounter with a sea beast called the Kinotaur. That's right, a sea monster. The result was the birth of Merovec, half man, half god, or as I call it, a fantastic excuse for a royal affair. But whatever the truth, the Merovingians believed that a supernatural power flowed in their blood, and that power lay in their hair. They never cut their hair. Their flowing long hair was their true crown. Cutting their hair was akin to castrating their soul. They were warrior kings, brutal, ambitious, and rife with prophecies. But power is a fickle mistress. By the 8th century, these long-haired kings became weak. They were called the do-nothing kings, rois fainéants, sitting on the throne as decoration while the mayors of the palace ran the country. 751 AD. The last king, Childeric III, don't confuse him with Childeric II as some outdated history books write, was deposed, not by a glorious battle, but by a stab in the back from his own mayor, Pepin the Short, father of the great Charlemagne. Childeric was shaved bald, the ultimate humiliation, and thrown into a monastery to die slowly in the shadows. The Carolingians took the throne with the church's blessing. The Merovingians were officially wiped out. Or is that what they want us to think? History is written by the victors, my friend, but silence. Silence belongs to the survivors. There are persistent rumors that the bloodline did not die in the monastery, that a child was smuggled away. An alliance in the shadows was established. Most people look for the Holy Grail or the Merovingian bloodline in the south of France. Rennes-le-Château, Languedoc. Too predictable, too crowded. But look to the north, where the frozen lakes never melt. There is an ancient fragmented text known as the Prophecy of the North. Most scholars threw it in the trash, assuming it was nonsense. It was found in the margins of a 13th century Norse manuscript. Listen closely, because this might be the only treasure map we have. When the blood of the southern kings meets the sleep of frost, the crown shall rise again, cold but unbroken. Sounds like bad poetry, right? But to those who hunt fringe history, this is a geographical direction. The southern kings, Merovingian. The sleep of frost, Scandinavia. Why Scandinavia? Why would a French noble lineage run to this god-forsaken cold place? The answer lies in a deadly coincidence. The 1300s. Friday, October 13th, 1307. King Philip IV of France decided to wipe out the Knights Templar. Torture, burning at the stake, confiscation of assets. Official reason: they worshipped the demon Baphomet and engaged in homosexuality. Actual reason: the king owed them too much money. But there is a crazier theory: that the Templars were protecting something. Not gold or silver, but people. That they were the guardians of the surviving Merovingian bloodline. When the flames consumed Paris, a Templar fleet vanished from the port of La Rochelle. Where did they go? Some say Scotland, some say the Americas. But the crimson traces on rocks in Norway, the Templar crosses carved on stave churches, and records of a southern brotherhood in red cloaks arriving in Iceland in the early 14th century, they all point in one direction. What if this frozen land was chosen not because of geographical distance, but because of memory? Because the ancient northern gods would welcome the Sorcerer Kings as lost brothers? If the silence here is not emptiness, but waiting? Before there was ice, there was water. Before there were stone tombs, there was a living legend. And before these kings learned to kneel before the cross, they learned to swim with monsters. We are talking about origins. And the origin of the Merovingians did not begin in a warm palace. It began here, in the deep. Let me tell you the craziest fairy tale in European history. It tells of the mother of Merovec, the patriarch of this family. She was a queen, but one fine day she went for a swim in the sea. And there she met something. History calls it the Kinotaur, a sea beast, half bull, half fish, horned and breathing foam. She did not run away, and the result? Merovec was born. You might laugh. You might say, "Come on, Zorro. That's just how the ancients covered up a sneaky affair with some burly sailor." You might be right, but think a little deeper. In the ancient world, You didn't make up stories about sleeping with monsters unless you wanted to send a very specific message. This bloodline does not belong to the world of men. Merovec and his descendants were seen as carrying two bloods, half mortal, half something else, something wild, ancient, and beyond the control of law or religion. That is why they kept their hair long. It was their spiritual antenna. Cut it off, and you disconnect them from the Father in the deep sea. And it was this hybrid blood, reeking of the sea and iron, that birthed their greatest, most brutal king, Clovis I. Forget the oil paintings of benevolent kings. Clovis was a predator. Born in 466, he grew up as the Roman Empire was dying, thrashing on the floor of Europe. He understood one thing: the strongest is the most ruthless. He killed rivals, purged other chieftains, and united the Frankish tribes under one axe. But Clovis was smart enough to know that you cannot rule forever through fear alone. You need a glue stronger than blood. You need the divine. And on the other side of the chessboard, we have the Roman Catholic Church. In the 5th century, the Pope in Rome was not the powerful king he would later become. He was just a trembling bishop, surrounded by barbarian tribes who were pagan or Arian, those whom Rome considered heretics. The church needed a protecting sword. Clovis needed a legitimate crown. It was a marriage not of love, but of survival, a contract signed in faith. 496 AD, the battle against the Alemanni. Clovis was losing. He looked up to the sky, desperate, and he made a bet. He called upon his wife's God, Christ. He swore, "Give me victory and I will be baptized." And he won. Come to Reims, Christmas 496. The cold cut the skin. Thousands of Frankish warriors, bare-chested, stepped into freezing baptismal fonts. The water dyed red by torchlight. Clovis stood there, bowing his head before Bishop Remigius. This was the moment that changed the destiny of Europe. But the most important detail is the weirdest one. Legend has it that as the bishop prepared to anoint him, the crowd was so dense that the priest carrying the holy oil could not push through. Suddenly, a white dove swooped down from the sky, holding a small vial in its beak. That was the holy ampulla, containing a fragrant oil that never ran dry, not made by human hands. A dove? Bringing holy oil? Sound familiar? It sounds like a top-tier magic show to dazzle a crowd of superstitious peasants. But for Clovis, it meant something else. Being anointed with this heavenly oil turned him into a Christus Domini, an anointed one of the Lord. He was no longer just a king. He became a demigod figure in the eyes of the church. But here is where the story turns dark. The church thought they had tamed the beast. They thought that by baptizing Clovis, they had turned him into a new Constantine, a pious sheep. They were dead wrong. Clovis and his descendants did not view Christianity as a replacement for their divine blood. They viewed it as a new suit of armor, an additional tool. They still kept their long hair. They still buried their dead with weapons and charms. They still performed rituals in the deep forest that Roman priests had to turn a blind eye to out of fear. You see, Rome wanted a puppet king, but they accidentally created a priest king legitimized by their own god. A bloodline sourced from a sea beast, yet anointed by heaven. That was too much power. A power that competed directly with the Pope. And the Church, with its 1,000-year survival instinct, began to realize this mistake. They began to feel a chill down their spines when looking at these long-haired kings. Men who called the name of God with their mouths, but whose hearts were bound to old stones. This rocky relationship lasted nearly 300 years. As the Pope's power grew stronger, their tolerance grew thinner. They could not accept a royal lineage that claimed to be naturally divine without the Pope's dispensation. That was heresy. That was arrogance. The bishops began to whisper into the ears of the nobility. They began to rewrite history. The powerful Merovingian kings were gradually described in chronicles as weak, lecherous, rex inutilis, useless kings. It was the filthiest and most effective smear campaign of the Middle Ages. If you cannot kill a god, make him into a joke. But the Merovingians were not stupid. They felt the noose tightening. Dagobert II, one of the last kings to truly hold power, was assassinated while hunting, a spear through the eye. Accident or a message? When the church shook hands with the Carolingian family, ambitious mayors but with clean, obedient, mortal blood, the fate of the House of Merovingian was sealed. In 751, when Childeric III was dragged off the throne and shaved, it wasn't just a political coup. It was a spiritual purge. Rome wanted to sever the link to the pagan past. They wanted to wipe out the blood of the sea beast. But have you ever wondered why Napoleon Bonaparte, 1,000 years later, when crowned emperor, refused the fleur-de-lis symbol of previous French kings? Instead, he chose to wear a red velvet cloak embroidered with golden bees. Those bees were found in the tomb of King Childeric I. Why bees? Why the symbol of resurrection, of sweet honey and poison? Did Napoleon know something we don't? Was he signaling that the bloodline never truly vanished? That they had retreated into the shadows, carrying secrets that could shake the entire Christian world, waiting for the moment to sting those who betrayed them? In the next part, we will leave the palaces of France to embark on a much more dangerous journey. We will follow the exiles, from secret catacombs to the ships of the Knights Templar, and the reason why the prophecy of the North speaks of a cold crown. Hold tight to your faith because it is about to be tested. When you chop off a snake's head, its tail keeps thrashing for a long time. But when you chop off the head of a dynasty, sometimes that corpse grows legs and runs away. Welcome back. We witnessed the fall. In 751, the Merovingians were wiped out by Rome. Officially, they were extinct. Mainstream historians will tell you that the sacred bloodline dried up in dull monasteries. But let me tell you about the law of weeds. The more you try to uproot them, the further their seeds fly. If the loyalists, those who still believed in the power of long hair and beast blood, saved a child, or even just a pregnant woman, where would they run? They couldn't go south. Rome was guarding there. Couldn't go east, too exposed. There was only one place, a wild land where the Pope's law could not yet reach, where people still worshipped warrior gods and believed in divine bloodlines. The North, Scandinavia. This is where things get interesting and crazy. In Norse sagas, centuries after the Merovingians fell, names suddenly appear that do not belong there. Sigebert, Dagobert, Clare. These are distinctly Frankish names, royal names of the Merovingian family. Why do they appear in Viking genealogies? Why are there epic poems about fair-haired foreign kings arriving from the south bearing the weight of prophecy? Scholars call it coincidence. I call it the trail of a fugitive. Imagine a royal bloodline hiding under the guise of merchants or exiled warriors, slowly blending into the northern nobility. They waited. They kept the secret. But they needed a new protector, a force strong enough to challenge Rome once again. And destiny, or the irony of history, brought them the perfect ally. Let's fast forward to 1307, 500 years after the Merovingians fell. Another French king, Philip IV, decided to play the game of killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. This time, the victim was the Knights Templar. We all know the story. torture, burning alive, the curse of Jacques de Molay. But there is a detail that history textbooks often leave in the footnotes. On the night before the raid, a Templar fleet quietly left the port of La Rochelle. 18 ships loaded with something. Gold and silver? Maybe. But the Templars were living banks. They knew gold was just metal. The most precious thing they possessed was knowledge and relics. There is a theory that during their excavations at the Temple of Jerusalem, the Knights Templar found proof of the Merovingian lineage, or perhaps the true Holy Grail, if you believe the Grail is the bloodline, sangreal, not a wine cup. They realized the church had lied, and when the church turned its back on the Templars, the enemy of the enemy became a friend. Where did that fleet go? Scotland? Sure, but Scotland was in turmoil then. There was a safer, more distant destination, Norway and Iceland. Look at this architecture. This is a Norwegian stave church. What does it look like? An overturned Viking ship? Yes. But look closely at the symbols. Red splayed crosses. Sacred geometry reminiscent of Solomon's temple, the obsession of the Templars. And in tombs in Iceland dating to the early 14th century, people found red stones carved with Frankish characters. Icelandic chronicles mention southern brothers in red cloaks coming from the sea. Let's tie it together. Merovingian, the deposed sacred blood, fleeing north, blending into Viking legend. Templar, betrayed warriors, holding the secret of that bloodline, setting sail north to find sanctuary. This convergence created a deadly alliance in the shadows. The North was not just a hideout, it was a fortress. The prophecy we read in Part 1, when the blood of the Southern Kings meets the sleep of frost, it isn't a metaphor, it is a memo, a confirmation that the package has arrived safely. So, what did they do there? They didn't rebuild a kingdom. They didn't march armies to attack Rome. They did what the Merovingians did best: be silent and exist. They buried their treasure of knowledge. They carved signs into granite in places no one visits, like the rock in the fjord we saw, to mark territory or to guide those worthy of finding it in the future. Perhaps the biggest secret isn't that they escaped, but that they transformed. They were no longer French kings nor Christian knights. They became something hybrid, hard as ice and mysterious as the sea. A true secret society, protecting a bloodline that could overturn the entire foundation of Western dogma if revealed. But the final question, the most terrifying question, remains. Where is that bloodline now? Did it die in the snow and ice? Or is it still flowing silently in the veins of modern people whom we do not suspect? The ancients believed the aurora borealis was the path to the afterlife. But to me, it looks like a giant cosmic barcode scanner trying to read the secrets carved into this ground. We have come a long way, from sea monsters to the bloody baptism in Rams, through the pyres of the Templars, and finally to this end of the world. Now, let's answer the final question. What do the inscription on the rock and the prophecy of the North really mean to you today? When the blood of the Southern Kings meets the sleep of frost, the crown shall rise again, cold but unbroken. Mainstream historians laugh it off as poetry, but in the language of cryptography and secret societies, every word is a bullet. Cold does not just refer to temperature. In ancient political terminology, cold meant anonymous, without the warmth of public acclaim. A hot king sits on a throne, wears a gold crown, and is easily beheaded. A cold king needs no throne. He rules from the shadows. He rules through banks, through trade alliances, through noble families intermarried in a tangled web across Europe that you never remember the names of. And unbroken? It means the bloodline continues to flow. Remember Napoleon's golden bees. Napoleon wasn't stupid. He understood that true power did not come from the Pope. It came from a more ancient bloodline. By draping himself in Childeric's bees, he was telling the underworld, "I know who you are, and I am your heir." Maybe the Merovingians didn't rise in the way we think. They didn't return to Paris to claim the throne. They learned history's most painful lesson. Presence is the enemy of existence. If you want to rule forever, become invisible. Become a legend that people only dare to whisper. Locals say the wind around that rock speaks dead languages. Maybe they are right. But maybe it isn't ghosts. It is memory. My theory? That rock and similar rocks scattered across Scandinavia are not tombstones. They are boundary markers, checkpoints for an exile network active since the 14th century, Merovingian and Templar. Two forces rejected by the old world order found each other in the frost. They merged divine blood and a treasury of secret knowledge to create a new order. Maybe they dissolved into the general population. Maybe your neighbor or some eccentric CEO carries a strand of Merovec's DNA that even they don't know about. Or maybe they are still keeping in touch. A northern brotherhood, still silently guarding the sleep of frost, waiting for the day the world collapses to step into the light once more. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But remember, we live in a world where 700 years ago, a dove bringing holy oil from the sky was considered an obvious fact. So, why is the existence of a royal bloodline in secrecy so hard to believe? History is not what happened. History is what is left after the victors have burned all the evidence. The rock in the Arctic is the thing they forgot to burn, or couldn't burn. Welcome to the ends of the earth, where the sun is a stranger in winter, and the wind. The wind here doesn't just blow, it bites. It tears the skin. It carves into stone secrets that time should have buried. We often think of the North as the home of axe-wielding barbarians, screaming and looting. Vikings, Thor, Odin, bloody stories, but simple ones. But what if I told you that deep beneath that permafrost lies a bloodline that does not belong here? A regal, sacred bloodline that is on the run? Look at the Merovingian dynasty, the long-haired kings of the Franks. They didn't rule by the spear, they ruled by aura. They were considered descendants of gods, demigods, men with blood that healed sickness. But then, boom, in 751, they vanished from the political stage, drowned in darkness by Rome and the usurpers. History books say they died, or were thrown into monasteries and shaved bald, the ultimate humiliation. But look up north, the Yngling dynasty of Norway, the Silding clan of Denmark. Who were they? They claimed to be descendants of Odin. They also wore long hair. They also considered lineage more important than killing skills. Their power was spiritual. Do you smell something burning? Two cultures, thousands of miles apart, sharing a weirdly identical royal marketing brand. A coincidence? Sorry, the word coincidence isn't in my dictionary. Only unsolved crime scenes. Don't just listen to me blowing smoke. Let science speak. In 2018, they dug up ancient graves in northern France. And guess what? They found Scandinavian DNA sitting comfortably there from long before the Viking Age began. What does this mean? The Frankish and northern elites were mingling much more thoroughly than we thought. Maybe the Merovingians carried northern blood to begin with. But the more interesting theory, and the darker one, is the reverse. When an empire falls, where do you run? You don't run toward the enemy. You run toward the wild. You run to where Rome cannot reach. Ancient Icelandic sagas mention kings with red marks arriving on ships with sails of blood and bone. They bore no flags, but they spoke of prophetic dreams. Is that poetic metaphor? Or is it the memory of a desperate evacuation of those carrying the blood of lords? Go to Dalarna, Sweden. This forest is called Kunkan, the King's Forest. Sounds like a secret already, right? There is a chapel here from the 12th century, and on the wall, near the altar, is something that shouldn't exist. A bee, not an eagle, not a wolf, or a Nordic bear. 1. Bee. Do you know who used the bee as a symbol? The Merovingians. Napoleon later copied them. Locals call this carving the sleeping king, a foreigner who brought the language of circles. They say he fled from persecution. An ancient French king hibernating in the middle of a Swedish forest? Sounds crazy, right? But wait, I have something better for you. Let's fly to Finland. In 1911, under a collapsed barn, they found a stone. On it was carved a Latin inscription: Sanguis raises silence. Experts scoffed, "Oh, just a hoax." But one small detail wiped the smiles off their faces. That Latin script style. It was written in the exact grammatical style of 8th century Gaul. How does an inscription from 8th century France end up under a pile of snow in Finland, 2,000 kilometers away? Who brought it there? And what the hell is the silence that this blood awakens? There is an old proverb in the north: the ice always remembers. Perhaps Merovek's blood didn't die. It just froze. And you know, anything that freezes can melt and rise again. But the story doesn't stop with a few exiled kings, because a few centuries later, another group also vanished. Rich, dangerous men holding secrets that could overthrow the church itself. And guess where they went? (1928). A moldy attic in a monastery in northern Iceland. No one had been up here for a century. The smell here was the smell of dead time, smoke, sea salt, and oblivion. They found a piece of parchment. It shouldn't have been there. It was filed in the wrong place, abandoned like a bastard child. But what made the old librarian tremble was not its age, but the language. It was a linguistic monster, a twisted hybrid of Roman Latin and Old Norse, like a scholar trying to talk to a drunk Viking. And its content? It contained a passage that has given historians a headache for the past 100 years. I call it the prophecy of the North, the blood of the Southern Kings. To Icelanders, the South meant the people of the continent, the Franks, the Merovingians, the sleep of frost, a metaphor for death or preservation, like how people freeze meat to eat gradually over the winter. Cold but unbroken, a dynasty that is not dead, only hibernating. You think this is the romantic poetry of some drunken monks? I would like to believe that too, but look at the carbon dating of the ink. Late 13th century, early 14th century. What is special about this time period? That was when Europe was erasing the memory of the Merovingians from the history books. And more importantly, it was the time when another powerful group began to evaporate from the face of the earth. The year 1307. You know who I am talking about. The Temple Keepers. The Knights Templar. If the Icelandic manuscript was the only piece of paper, I would tear it up and forget about this. But no. Let's go to Blåfjell, Norway. Deep inside this cave network, someone carved a message into the stone. It wasn't written in Norwegian. It was written in Carolingian script, the script of Frankish royalty. The line reads, Regnum non perit sed dormit, meaning the kingdom does not die, but sleeps. It matches the text in Iceland to a chilling degree. This is not a coincidence. This is a code, an underground slogan passed from one person to another, from this cave to that attic, a reminder that we are still here, keep silent. The night of October 13th, 1307, King Philip IV of France, a king as deep in debt as a gambler, decided to wipe out his biggest creditor, the Knights Templar. Charges: heresy, devil worship, spitting on the cross. Bullshit charges, but effective. But King Philip made one mistake. He caught the knights, but he didn't catch the fleet. At the port of La Rochelle, the Templar fleet weighed anchor right in the night, vanishing into the Atlantic fog. Mainstream history says they ran to Portugal or Scotland. But listen to me. If you are holding a secret that could get the Pope to hang you, you don't run to neighboring countries. You run to the ends of the earth. Chronicles of that time whisper about ships fleeing to the north, and a document from a Hanseatic sailor recorded ships bearing Red Cross sails docking in Bergen, Norway, a few weeks after the purge. They didn't trade. They didn't buy dried fish. They docked, resupplied fresh water, then disappeared into the deep, dark fjords like ghosts. The million-dollar question here is, what were they carrying? Gold and jewels? Maybe. But Templars weren't stupid. Gold is heavy, and gold cannot reproduce. There is a crazy theory that mainstream historians hate with a passion, that the fleet was carrying the Holy Grail, but not the jeweled wooden cup that Indiana Jones went looking for. In the ancient language, Sangreal, Holy Grail, is very easily misread as Sangreal, royal blood. If the Templars discovered that the Merovingians truly carried the sacred blood, the blood of God, as rumors claimed, then their mission was not to protect a bank. Their mission was to protect people. Imagine it. Black ships drifting in the Nordic mist, carrying the last descendants of a hunted lineage. Kings without thrones. Princes in hiding. They needed a place where Rome could not reach. A place where rock and ice would conceal them. A place where people respected blood oaths and kept secrets better than the dead. The prophecy of the North is not poetry. It is a mission status report. The crown is cold but unbroken, meaning the cargo has arrived safely. The target is still alive. You think I'm speculating? Then why, centuries later, in the most remote wooden churches of Norway, do we find the precise symbols of the Templars and Merovingians mixed together? Why are their graves facing west with carvings that no one can explain? Do you believe in coincidences? If you are walking in the forest and see a Ferrari parked next to a thatched hut, do you think it is random? No. You would think someone is hiding something very expensive. Welcome to the stave churches of Norway. Ruldal, Urnes, Torpo. Viking architectural masterpieces? Yes. But step inside, brush off the dust of time, and look closer. Mainstream scholars call these carvings decorative patterns. They say the carpenter was just being creative. But look at this. This is not a normal cross. The arms splay out, a circle in the center. This is the cross pate, the signature symbol on the seals of the Knights Templar all the way in Champagne, France. And even crazier? Go to Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim. Under the foundation, they found stone blocks carved with spirals forming the shape of an insect. A bee. Why a bee? Jesus is not compared to a bee. St. Olaf isn't either, but the Merovingians were. To them, the bee was the symbol of immortality, of the reborn soul. A pagan symbol of the Frankish bloodline lying beneath the foundation of Norway's holiest church? That isn't decoration. That is territory marking. Let's go to Song Agadan. People here still whisper the story of the White Brothers. They came from the south by ship, sparing with words like stones. They built a square house, an architecture completely alien to the locals at that time. They protected a secret room, and when they died, that room remained sealed. In 1991, researchers broke that silence. What did they find? Not Viking bones. They found a stone cross facing west, and beneath it, a lead box. Inside the box were scraps of crimson cloth that had rotted away, but on the cloth there remained an embroidery in gold thread. Bingo. White cloak, Templar, golden bee, Merovingian. Two pieces of a torn historical picture converged in a burial pit in Norway. If this isn't proof of the rescue of the century, I don't know what to call it. But physical evidence is only half the story. The other half lies in the whispered words. In 1933, a curious traveler visited the abandoned Skaga Chapel in Sweden. On the wall, he transcribed a scrawled Latin line, written hastily as if the writer was afraid. Guxium transit, renum vivid. It is pidgin Latin, grammatically incorrect, likely written by a non-scholar or a madman, but its meaning is chilling. Through ice, the kingdom lives. Which kingdom? Sweden? No, Sweden was stable then, no need to live through ice. This line is talking about an exiled kingdom, a kingdom inside the luggage of runaways. We have talked about stone, gold, ships. But the most precious thing the Templars protected was not material. It was blood. In the Holar region, Iceland, there is a legend about the Child of Silence, a boy born with a round red birthmark right over his heart. His family lived in isolation, no socializing, no origins. Villagers rumored that the boy knew the future, but the strangest thing was how his family disappeared, not died. Just one day, they were no longer there. Records wiped clean. Icelandic genealogy researchers found vague records of southern blood protected by brothers of the wooden shield from the east. There is a conspiracy theory that the prophecy of the north has a second part that was never written down on paper. It says, "The crown shall rise not through war, but through memory, not by the sword, but by realization." They didn't intend to rebuild an army to retake Paris, no. They were playing a much longer chess game. They dissolved into the local bloodline. They became farmers, fishermen, blacksmiths, waiting for the day the world became safe again. Or perhaps they are still waiting. But the story hasn't ended yet. If the Templars and the Merovingian bloodline really came here, they didn't just hide in holes. They needed allies. They needed local protectors. And what does history say? King Håkon V of Norway, King Birger of Sweden. These northern kings suddenly had brilliant military advisors, excellent coastal fleets appearing out of nowhere in the early 14th century. And then, a mysterious figure appeared at Thingvellir, the political heart of Iceland, a man called the Red Stranger. Who was he? And what did he say to the Viking tribal leaders to be allowed to stay? Welcome to Thingvellir, where the earth literally cracks in two, where the law was born amidst rock and moss. But here, among the stories of Viking lawyers, is a forgotten legend that keeps me up at night. The story of the Red Stranger. He came from the open sea, nameless, without a clan. He built a stone house by the cliff and planted trees in the shape of a cross. When people asked whom he served, he didn't say God, nor did he say Odin. He replied, "I serve that which sleeps. His tomb was never found." And here is the twist. In 18th century parish records in the Lofoten region, They found a note about a stone slab carved with the phrase Regnum in Tenebris, kingdom in the shadows. Not a dead kingdom, but a kingdom operating underground, an exiled government, a bloodline biding its time. Think like a medieval politician. You are King Håkon V of Norway or King Birger of Sweden. You are ruling a wild land, and suddenly the most elite army in Europe, men who know how to build stone fortresses, know how to navigate by stars, know how to manage finances, knocks on your door. They are wanted by the Pope. They need refuge. You need their military technology. What do? Hand them over? No. You sign a devil's pact. No official treaty has been found. Of course not. Who would write down evidence of aiding heresy? But the clues lie in the small details. In 1313, King Eric VI of Denmark wrote a letter mentioning Brothers of the Road, who helped him defend the coast. Brothers of the Road. Sound familiar? That was the slang code name French documents used for nomadic Templar units. They changed their names, took off the Red Cross cloaks, but they were still those warriors. Only now they served northern kings in exchange for silence. Icelandic sagas tell of Hammerhand, a foreign warrior gifted a silver ring carved with the language of kings. He was granted land, built a church. Go to Nordfjord today. The wooden church rotted away long ago, but the foundation stones remain. And on the stones you will see geometric patterns that do not exist in Viking art or Nordic Christianity. Those are sacred mathematics, architectural codes that only those who once built Solomon's temple would understand. The Norsemen weren't stupid. They knew these guests were hiding something. But in northern culture, omerta, the law of silence, is gold. If you bring benefit to the tribe, your past is erased. I am standing at a place called Kororsvien, the crossroads. It's not on Google Maps. You have to ask the oldest people in the village, and maybe even they won't show you. At this bend, there is a rock covered in lichen. Here it is, not the cross of Jesus, not Thor's hammer. It is a directional sign, a message for those coming after. This way, safe. The Templars didn't run chaotically. They had a plan, an organized migration to move their most precious cargo, whether it was the Holy Grail or a child bearing Merovingian blood, deep into the interior, encased in rock and ice. They didn't build castles to flaunt power. They built bunkers to protect memory. So what is the truth? Did the blood of Jesus and the Merovingian kings die in 751? Or did it board ships, cross the ocean, and dissolve into the brave Viking bloodlines? Do the reclusive families in the deep valleys of Norway and Iceland today still hold that secret in their genes? There is no paper confirming this. Mainstream history will shake its head and call it a fairy tale. But remember the prophecy in that dusty attic. The crown shall rise again, cold but unbroken. Imagine you are standing at the edge of the world in the early 14th century. Europe is burning. The Black Death is knocking on every door, and the mightiest powers are collapsing. But while the whole world looks toward Rome or Paris, in a hidden corner of the frozen north, something strange is happening. Look at this document. This is a chronicle from Vadstena Abbey, Sweden. The monks here recorded an event that has made modern historians scratch their heads for hundreds of years. They wrote about the arrival of warrior monks, men who did not come to loot gold, nor to beg for God's grace. They came seeking a sanctuary, waiting for something called a fire signal. Fire signal? Sounds more like spy codes from the Cold War than 14th century language, right? Many say they were Cathar heretics. but I smell the iron and blood of a different group. A group that had just been hunted to the brink of extinction by the church and the French king on that fateful Friday the 13th. That's right. I'm talking about the remnants of the Knights Templar. But why the north? Why the land of the pagan Vikings of old? To answer this, I want you to come with me to the Bergen Museum. There, lying silent and cold, is a stone found in Moster. The Håkonshallen slab. Look closely at it. A double circle, two stylized stags, and in the center, a single red rose. To a layman, it's just a scribble, but to symbol hunters like us, it is a confession in stone. The rose, symbol of martyrdom, of secrecy, and most importantly, hidden wisdom. It appears in legends of the Holy Grail, in the later Rosicrucian secret societies. Its presence here, at that time, is like finding an iPhone in a pharaoh's tomb. It doesn't belong here unless it was brought here. You see, the 14th century in Northern Europe was a mess. Kings were trembling on their thrones due to internal conflict and plague. They needed power. And suddenly these homeless warrior monks appeared. They were exiles, but in their heads, they held knowledge of fortress construction that Norsemen had never seen, superior trade techniques, and mystical rituals. This wasn't a diplomatic treaty. Don't be so naive. This was an underground deal. One side needed a place to hide from the Pope's destruction. The other needed to protect their power. The price? Absolute silence. Look at the strange marriages in the 1300s, knights of foreign origin, with no family names in the noble lists, marrying daughters of Swedish lineages. Their coats of arms were not recognized, but if you squint, you will see the shadows of Aquitaine, of Burgundy, the old lairs of the Templars. They dissolved into the northern bloodlines. They changed their names, buried their pasts. But sometimes, the past still rises to the surface. Let's go further, to the wild Finnmark region, along the edge of the Tana River. Legend tells of a southern brotherhood that built stone vaults here, places where Christian missionaries had never set foot. The locals feared them. They said these men prayed at night, but did not face east, where Jerusalem lies. They faced north. Why north? What were they looking for? Or were they protecting something located at the very pole of the world? The only remaining trace is a bell, found buried in ice and snow after the plague swept through. Carved on it is a strange cross and a Latin line, Fiat lux in tenebris, let there be light in darkness. This phrase later became the slogan of Central European secret societies, but here it lies cold in the ice, like an oath never broken. What is the light they spoke of? Surely not the sun, because here, winter is an eternal night. And then, we have the story from the Åland Islands. A 17th century diary records an encounter with a strange family. They spoke an old French that no one understood, refused to enter the church. When questioned, the old woman leading the clan said a sentence that I consider the most badass in the history of heresy. The stones we serve were raised before your priest learned to speak. There is nothing more to say. That family died without leaving a grave, as if they never existed. My friend, tie it all together. Exiled knights, codes on stone, prayers facing north, clans refusing the Christ of Rome. If this was just to protect Templar gold, they would have spent it or buried it somewhere warmer. No one drags themselves to a place where dogs eat rocks and chickens eat pebbles, a godforsaken wasteland, just to keep a pile of metal. They were protecting something more alive, more ancient, something the church in Rome feared enough to want to wipe off the face of the earth. A bloodline, a royal secret stolen and brought north to keep warm in the cold. But whose bloodline? And why did its existence cause the crowned heads in the south to lose sleep? To understand this, we must go back in time, back to before the darkness covered a legendary dynasty. The dynasty of long-haired kings who believed that the blood of gods flowed in their veins. The answer lies in the name that history has deliberately forgotten: Meroving. We often think the fall of a dynasty must look like a Hollywood movie. Bloody great battles, burning citadels, and the last king falling with a sword in his hand. But the truth? The truth is much more cruel and cold. The fall of the Merovingian dynasty was not an explosion. It was a fading out, like someone walking along a row of candles in an empty church, blowing them out, one by one, until darkness swallows everything. Let's talk about this case. Victim: the Merovingian bloodline. Perpetrator: the most ruthless political alliance in European history. In the mid-8th century, the Merovingian kings, once worshipped as demigods, men who wore long hair as a symbol of Samson-like strength, had become puppets. Real power lay in the hands of the mayors of the palace. Among them, the Carolingian family was rising like a hungry predator. You have Charles Martel, the Hammer, who smashed the Muslim army at Tours. A great warrior, sure, but his son, Pepin the Short, was the truly dangerous one. Pepin didn't want to stand behind the throne anymore. He wanted to sit on it, but there was a barrier. The throne was occupied. Childeric III. Childeric was not a tyrant. He was the legitimate king, anointed with holy oil, protected by ancient law. Pepin couldn't just kill the king. That would cause the people to revolt. He needed a weapon stronger than a sword. He needed a permission slip from God. In 751 AD, Pepin sent a trap question to Pope Zachary. Is it right for a man to hold the title of king but have no power? And the Pope, who needed an army to protect Rome from the Lombards, gave the answer that changed world history. He who holds the real power should be the one wearing the crown. Boom! With just one sentence, a clever theological trick, the fate of the Merovingian bloodline was sealed. This was not justice. This was a power transaction. The church sold legitimacy. Pepin paid with an army. What happened next is what truly makes one shudder. Childeric III wasn't beheaded in public. He was handled much more quietly. They shaved his head. Sounds ridiculous to our modern mindset, right? It's just a haircut? But for the Merovingians, long hair was the vessel of their destiny and divine power, divine right. Cutting off Childeric's hair was stealing his soul, turning a king into a lowly mortal. He was thrown into a monastery, buried in the silence of stone walls. No chronicle records the final years of his life, no royal funeral, no marked grave. The last king of a divine lineage, evaporated as if he never existed. But Pepin and later his son, Charlemagne the Great, knew that killing the king was not enough. One must kill the memory of the king. And so the Carolingian propaganda machine began to work at full capacity. They rewrote history. In textbooks approved by the church, the Merovingians were labeled rois fainéants, the do-nothing kings. They were painted as incompetent, corrupt, concerned only with debauchery. Don't be fooled. That is the tactic of the victor. In reality, kings like Dagobert I or even Childeric tried to reform laws and unify the kingdom. But this truth was too disadvantageous for the Carolingians. To legitimize the usurpation, they had to turn the victim into the villain. And the church? They were the most enthusiastic accomplices. Why did the church want to wipe out the Merovingians so badly? Not just because of politics, but because of spiritual competition. The Merovingians claimed their right to rule came from their blood. They considered themselves descendants of gods, and some legends even whispered that they carried the blood of Jesus. This was extremely dangerous for the Vatican. If a king has holy blood, why does he need a pope to anoint him? If power comes from DNA, where does the church stand in this food chain? Therefore, the Merovingians had to disappear, not just physically, but their legacy too. At Luxeuil Abbey, once patronized by the Merovingians, 9th century monks reported that ancient tombs were defaced, names scraped off. Genealogies ended abruptly in 750. Land records were shuffled. It was a systematic purge of memory, a desperate effort to fill the deep pit of history with the concrete of oblivion. But, history is like water. The more you try to compress it, the more it finds ways to leak out through the cracks. Whispers began to spread that Childeric III did not die in the monastery, that a child was taken away in the dark of night, that the lion sleeps, but his claws are in the north. The church thought they had buried the beast, but they were wrong. They only pushed it into the shadows. And in the shadows, new alliances began to form. Outcasts found each other. And that is when the strange symbols began to reappear: the bee, the rose, and the secret pact of revenge. You think that when the enemy has been stripped of the crown, shaved bald, and thrown into the darkness, the victor sleeps soundly. Mistake. For the Roman Catholic Church, victory over the Merovingians did not bring peace. It brought nightmares. Why? Because you can kill a man, but how do you kill a bloodline? How do you kill the belief that such blood carries the divine mandate of God? Look at the Vatican's dilemma. On one hand, they needed kings to protect them. But on the other, they feared a king with innate power. The Merovingians didn't need the Pope to dispense power. They believed they were born holy. And in a world where power is God's monopoly game, a competing bloodline is the most dangerous heresy. And this is where the story shifts from politics to spiritual detective work. Deep in the vaults of the Vatican's secret archives, there are documents where the dust of time cannot cover the fear. A letter from the 9th century sent by the Bishop of Lyon to Rome. His tone is not that of an administrative report, it is panic. He writes of strange pilgrims appearing at the borders of the Frankish kingdom. They wore tattered cloaks, but on them was a faint seal of a bee. They whispered of visions, of a return. The church realized that no matter how many statues they smashed, the story refused to die. It just burrowed underground, spreading like tree roots in the dark. And so a silent war erupted, a war of symbols. The bee, the symbol of resurrection, of royalty, and most importantly, the sweet honey of wisdom. The Merovingians worshipped it. Therefore, the church had to destroy it. Cathedrals once built by the Merovingians were renamed. At Saint-Denis, the resting place of kings, masons of the new dynasty were hired to chisel away inscriptions, to disfigure faces on tombstones. They wanted to cleanse history. They wanted the world to believe that before Charlemagne, there was only chaotic darkness. But the irony of history lies here. The one who wants to hide a secret is often the one who inadvertently admits it. In ancient liturgical texts, Roman pontifical, clumsy deletions have been found. Those passages once mentioned the holy oil of kingship, the oil believed to be brought down by a divine dove to anoint the first Merovingian king. The church later tried to rewrite this passage, tried to turn it into a metaphor, but the ink stains remain, like a scar betraying the lie. And more terrifying for Rome is the rumor of a manuscript in Glastonbury, England. It maps out a shocking genealogy. The Frankish royal bloodline connects directly to Joseph of Arimathea, and through that, connects to the very blood of Jesus. Stop for a second to reflect on the weight of this. If that is true, or even if people just believe it is true, then the entire structure of the church collapses. Who needs a pope, the heir of St. Peter? If you have a king carrying the blood of Christ walking on the earth, that isn't just politics, that is survival. How big was this fear? Big enough that even the heads of the church were haunted by it. We have a document attributed to Pope Sylvester II, the mysterious sorcerer pope of the 10th century. He wrote a chilling warning: "A house of bees shall rise in the land of mists. Its crown shall not be forged by hands, and it shall remember what Rome has forgotten." House of bees. You don't need to be a decoding genius to know who he was talking about. This prophecy repeated in secret texts of secret societies throughout the Renaissance. It was a reminder that bloodline is still alive. The church knew it. The Knights Templar probably discovered it, and that was the real reason they were burned alive. Not because they worshipped Baphomet or spat on the cross, but because they swore allegiance to the true blood, not the man sitting on the throne in Rome. And if that blood didn't die, then where is it? The answer lies where the light of the Vatican cannot reach, in a place where eternal ice preserves everything, in a place where farmers still carve roses and spirals onto their doors, waiting for a day when the ice melts. The lost dynasty did not vanish into the void. They went north. You think history lies in textbooks, in dusty libraries in Paris or the Vatican? No, that is where history is written. But the place where history actually lives is here, in this bone-chilling cold. When the church burned texts, when Pepin shaved the heads of kings, they thought they had wiped everything clean. But they forgot a fundamental human rule. We do not remember with ink. We remember with stories told by the fire. In this far north, where night is longer than day, memory does not evaporate. It freezes. It becomes folklore. And it is here, in the fairy tales that scholars often sneer at, that we find the final fragments of the Merovingian bloodline. Go to Norway. People here still whisper about a fair-haired king who fled to the south in primordial times, but then secretly returned. He brought with him the eye that sees through the night. Sound familiar? That is the image of the seers, the Sorcerer Kings of the Merovingian clan. Or go to Dalarna, Sweden. Farmers here pass down stories about the Red Bee Lords. Who were they? Men who spoke with a heavy accent, lived in fortified stone towers. They never opened their doors on Sunday, the day of Christ. And they kept bees, not to get honey for bread, but to transmit messages. Do you see the coincidence? Bees, spirals on doors, long hair, kings sleeping underground waiting for the day to awaken. This isn't the fertile imagination of senile old women. This is a data storage system. When you cannot write the truth on parchment for fear of being burned alive, you hide the truth in lullabies, in ghost stories. You turn history into legend so it survives the purge. And perhaps the most haunting story, the story that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, comes from the Stirland region on the southern coast of Sweden. They tell of the ghost of the Hollow Crown. He appears in the fog at crossroads near ancient burial mounds. He wears no crown, but his forehead glows, a sign of holy anointing or the aura of divine blood. He blocks the path of travelers and asks only a single riddle: who still remembers the blood? If you cannot answer, legend says you will forget your own name. An ironic punishment, right? You forget your identity, just as the world forgot the identity of his lineage. But those who answer correctly, they disappear. I ask myself, what does disappear mean here? Are they killed? Or are they recruited? taken behind the veil of secrecy, joining the silent army waiting for the fire signal. Do you believe in coincidences? Academia does. They worship it. When two pieces of history separated by thousands of miles and centuries suddenly fit together perfectly, our esteemed professors shrug and say, just random. But I don't. And if you are watching this video, I bet you don't either. Let's start this cold journey in Jämtland, a wild land between Sweden and Norway. In the early 1800s, when cultural explorers came here to record the ancient shamanic songs of the Sami people, they found something out of place. In the raw melodies, echoing through the old forest, there were lyrics telling of the son of the Sea King, a man buried under ice, but whose voice still echoes in the stone. Sounds very Norse mythology, right? But wait. When a curious researcher, a guy I guess was shunned by his colleagues, translated these lines and compared them, his blood ran cold. Those lyrics matched in every detail, every semantic nuance, with the epitaphs found on the tombs of the Merovingian lineage all the way in distant France. Ancient French and polar indigenous people? An absurd connection. That researcher exclaimed, either someone carried these words across time and space, or time and space are not as solid as we believe. That quote was like a bomb thrown into a round table of historians. And the result? Silence. No university dared to publish more. They let the issue fade, hoping the dust of time would cover this inconvenient truth. But my friends, truth is like a corpse floating in a river. No matter how many stones you tie to it to sink it deep, sooner or later it will surface. We don't just have songs, we have bodies, we have metal. In Gotland, archaeologists found a bizarre burial site. It is a hot pot of Frankish and Norse funeral styles. Look at this grave. Carbon dating points to around the year 1320. Remember this number, 1320. That was the time when the Knights Templar, those hunted by the church like wild beasts, were disbanding and fleeing in all directions. And in that grave, next to the dry skeleton, was a sword. On the sword was carved a cross, but beneath it was a rose, and near the blade, a pendant in the shape of a bee. A Norse knight wearing the bee symbol of ancient French royalty? Don't make me laugh. This is exactly the trace of Templar remnants that washed up on the Baltic shores. They didn't just run to save their lives. They ran to protect something. But the real tragedy lies in Trondheim. A small grave. Too small. The grave of a child. Inside there was no gold or silver, only a rotten wooden tag. The Latin lines on it were a strange dialect, as if the writer was trying to recall the language of his ancestors. Only 3 words were clearest. Sanctus Rex Dormant. Holy King sleeping. Who was that child? Why was a baby dying in this frozen land called a holy king? Could it be that the sacred bloodline did not live in magnificent castles, but was gasping for breath in wooden huts, trying to survive the harsh northern winter? If you think graves are scary, let me take you to Kvaland, Norway. Locals call this place Den Tause Kirken, the silent church. The name alone gives you the creeps. The stones that built it are pitch black, not from being burned, but time has gnawed at them, oxidizing them into the color of night. No construction permit, no record of founding. It's as if it grew out of nothingness. But step inside. On the remaining ruined wall, there is a mosaic. Not colorful stained glass. It is made of amber and animal bones. Human bones? Very possibly. They are arranged in a spiral, forming the shape of a rose, and beneath it, a Latin line that makes anyone who understands the story hold their breath. Sanguis dormit sed vigilat. Blood sleeps but watches. This sentence is not in the Bible. You won't find it in any Vatican missal. But do you know where it is? In the documents of the Cathars, those burned alive for heresy. And ironically, it appears in the margins of a Templar ledger from 1306. That is not a prayer. That is a code, a silent message between those in hiding. We are not dead. We are just waiting. And then we have the Vansar family in Finland, a decayed noble family living on the aura of the past. Family legend says their ancestor was a nameless southern knight who came by ship and saved the chieftain's daughter. A cheap romantic story, right? Historians laughed in their faces for centuries, until the 1990s. When people looked closely at this family's worn-out seal under a microscope, a faint Latin line appeared, Rex autem non perit. However, the king does not perish. And in their messy papers, there was a folded page, just a red spiral and the number 13. The number 13. Friday the 13th? The doom of the Templars? Or the sequence number of a generation? My friends, look up at the northern sky. The Norse call the aurora bifrost, the bridge between worlds. Maybe that isn't just a fairy tale. In this land of ice and silence, the exiles found the perfect sanctuary, not in castles, but in custom, not on a throne, but in memory. What started as a run for survival turned into a guardianship mission. They wait, watch, keep that bloodline sleeping but never extinguished. And when the stars align, the bridge will open. Or perhaps it has already opened? But how did they keep that secret for centuries without writing it on paper? They used a different language, a language that cannot be burned, cannot be erased, the language of symbols. And that, my friends, is where things get truly dark. Language is a cool thing, but it is easily manipulated. You can rewrite history, burn books, ban speech. But how do you kill an idea carved into stone? How do you silence a shape? There are languages more ancient than the alphabet. They do not need vowels or consonants. They speak through repetition, through geometry, and most importantly, through silence. For those tracking the shadow of the Merovingian lineage, these three symbols, the rose, the bee, and the spiral, are not interior decoration. Don't be naive. They are memory. They are codes. They are the vocabulary of a heritage that refuses to die. Let's talk about the rose. When you see it, what do you think of? Valentine's Day? Sappy romance? Forget it all. In sacred geometry, the rose, especially the five-petaled variety, represents the unfolding of divinity. Before Christianity set foot in Europe, it was there, symbolizing hidden knowledge and rebirth. The Rosicrucians in the 17th century used it as the badge of secret wisdom, but they were just latecomers. Go back centuries before that, down into the cold Merovingian crypts. You will see roses carved on stone lids, not the cute clustered flowers in your garden. They stand alone, solitary, stylized, painted with red ochre, the color of blood, the color of life. They are often surrounded by circles or spirals. Why? Because this isn't botanical drawing for visual pleasure. This is a danger sign. It is a spiritual marker screaming, "He who lies beneath carries royal blood touched by the divine," a warning or an assertion of eternal sovereignty. If the rose is blood, then the bee is power. The bee, creature of order, of diligence, and in the ancient world, symbol of resurrection. They hibernate like the dead and come alive when spring returns. When the tomb of Childeric, father of the great King Clovis, was opened, they found over 300 solid gold bees placed carefully around the remains. 300 tiny gold musketeers. They weren't toys, they were anointed guardians. Do you know who understood this best? Napoleon Bonaparte. When that Corsican dwarf crowned himself emperor in the 1800s, he chose the bee symbol. Why not the fleur-de-lis of the old Bourbon royalty? Because Napoleon didn't want to inherit from losers. He claimed he was reviving the ancient power of the Franks. He wanted to connect directly to the Merovingian bloodline. Maybe Napoleon knew more than history books record. Or maybe he just accidentally touched a terrifying truth. This bee appears again and again like a ghost, carved on chalices, embroidered on altar cloths, and strangest of all, in the margins of Knights Templar scrolls discussing finance, war, never mentioning honey or agriculture. But in the margin, there is always a bee sitting neatly inside a hexagonal frame, always hidden, always silent. And finally, the oldest of the trio, the spiral. It is present from prehistoric caves to Norse runestones. But for the Merovingians, the spiral wasn't a doodle, it was a map. A spiral can be a labyrinth to trap demons, but it can also be a path into the inner self, or a passage through time. At an abandoned monastery in northern France, they found a stone relief once considered bad abstract art. But when mathematicians stepped in, they realized it was a three-dimensional spiral, with a structure matching the golden ratio perfectly. Mathematical perfection in the Dark Ages? And beneath it, a worn-out Latin line, only readable under slanted light. Initium sanguis. The beginning is in the blood. This phrase appears again, scrawled in the margin of a 14th century prayer book found near Poitiers. It had nothing to do with the prayer content. It looked like a note from a reader trying to decode a secret or leaving a clue for the next person. The beginning is in the blood. Which blood? And what does it begin? In churches and crypts tied to the first Frankish rulers, this trio always goes together. Rose, bee, spiral. Never explained, never acknowledged in liturgical texts. Lazy scholars call them medieval graffiti. It's laughable. Recent evaluations suggest this is a hidden program, a symbolic language only for those holding the key. Go to Saint-Pierre de Moissac. Hidden behind a narthex pillar in the most obscured spot is a carving of a bee inside a rose, and that rose is surrounded by 3 concentric spirals. Thousands of pilgrims have walked past it. No one looked back. But if you bother to stoop down and squint, you will see the tiny text beneath, Lux Sanguinis. Light returns from blood. They aren't drawing graffiti on church walls. They are leaving signposts, a code without letters, transmitted not through inheritance of assets, but through recognition. To the outsider, it is decorative art. To the initiated, it is a command. Follow this path. But where does that path lead? And why does it appear in unexpected places like Scotland or Scandinavia? You think fugitives would huddle in caves and tremble waiting for death? Mistake. They weren't just running, they were building. They left breadcrumbs of stone and wood scattered across the old continent, forming an invisible network right under the noses of the Vatican and ruling dynasties. A cipher book without letters, transmitted not via post but via recognition. A spiritual GPS system for exiles. Follow me. We are going hunting. First is Gotland, an isolated island in the Baltic Sea. At a ruined Templar chapel outside Visby, we find it again. Rose, bee, spiral. The same configuration as in the south of France. A coincidence? Or a stopover? But let's hop across the North Sea to Scotland. Rosslyn Chapel. Ah, Rosslyn. the mecca of conspiracy theories. Everyone comes here looking for the Holy Grail, looking for Jesus's head, or looking for Templar treasure. They are busy looking at the ceiling and forget to look in the shadows. On the underside of a stone ledge, where you have to kneel to see, the trio of symbols appears again. But this time with an interesting variation. The spiral is replaced by a geometric rose formed from interlocking pentagons. And beneath it, a single hard-to-read word, regnum, kingdom. Which kingdom? Scotland? No. A kingdom without borders, without territory, existing only in blood and silence. These symbols are always isolated, placed in hard-to-see positions. They are like secret handshakes. If you know where to look, you are family. If not, you are just a tourist. In a private collection in Brussels, there is a 15th century notebook. A handwritten Latin note summed it all up. The blood shall recognize itself when light and curve are combined. France, the cradle of the Merovingians. Let's go to Chartres, a Gothic masterpiece. But few know it was built on the foundation of an ancient crypt, older than the church itself. Thousands of pilgrims walk on this stone labyrinth every day. They pray, they meditate, they seek God. But they don't know they are stepping on a secret. That labyrinth forms the shape of a giant rose, and in its center, hidden under a copper plate, is a carving of a bee. The builders left no explanation. Why explain? For whom? For the Pope? No way. Some crazy or genius researchers even claim that the layout of the entire Chartres Cathedral reflects the golden spiral, that the architecture itself is an encrypted message, that the stone masons, descendants of the old blood, hid their faith in the very stones that built the enemy's house. A beautiful irony, isn't it? But stone isn't the only storage. In wild Scandinavia, in the stave churches, the spiral reappears. Not on cold stone, but on warm wood, on beams and door frames. At Borgen Church, on a wooden beam hidden from view, they found carvings of 3 bees flying toward a 5-petaled rose. Priests called it folk motifs. Folklore, my foot. Look. The same formation was found painted red in a dilapidated chapel in France, where legend has it only 3 local families were allowed to enter at night. Could this trio of symbols, rose, bee, spiral, act like a medieval QR code? A geometric language transcending language barriers, transcending national borders? Why symbols? Why not write a book, Our Secret History? Because books can be burned. A name can be erased from the registry. But a spiral carved into stone or etched into heartwood cannot be unspoken. It speaks even in silence. That is the shape of memory. The Merovingians, if they were truly behind all this, then they weren't just deposed kings. They were master architects. They understood that political power is fleeting, but symbols are eternal. They wove their legacy into the very fabric of the Western world. They didn't disappear. They retreated into the shadows, into the wooden huts of the north, into the secret societies of stonemasons. They created a silent pact. Watch, wait, and remember. The act of remembering itself became a sacred ritual. And if you think this story ended in the Middle Ages, then you are dead wrong, because those bloodlines did not evaporate. They still flow, and the signs of their existence in the modern world are stranger and creepier than any sci-fi movie. What happens to a bloodline when it vanishes from the political map? Does it evaporate like morning mist, or does it do what every living creature does to survive? Adapt, transform, and hide under new guises. If you think the Merovingians ended their story in the dusty crypts of Saint-Denis, then you are too naive. They didn't disappear. They just went into a different line of work. They became ghosts in the machine of history. Look at the European nobility. There are families whose genealogies suddenly lose signal before the 9th century. They don't claim to be descendants of the great Charlemagne. They claim to come from a source earlier and quieter. Take the Montrose family as an example. In their archives, a 14th century manuscript was found. It was a sacred oath to protect a nameless king. And what is their crest? A rose, sitting inside a spiral, surrounded by bees. Is it random aesthetics? Or is it a secret ID card kept for 700 years? Or the von Ascheberg family in Germany? They claim their ancestors were exiled Merovingians who fled to the east. Sounds like a fantasy until World War II happened. Their ancestral chapel was dismantled to avoid bombing, and beneath a stained glass window depicting a stag wearing a crown, a Latin inscription was revealed: Ex sanguine veritas. From blood is truth. This family currently owns a plot of land in Thuringia. Aerial scans show a geometric anomaly beneath a dilapidated orchard. An underground chamber, sealed. They fought a frantic legal battle to stop anyone with a shovel from getting near it. What are they hiding? Gold? Or the bones of a king who was never allowed to die? In the south of France, near Rennes-le-Château, the navel of all legends, there are families who refuse DNA testing. Local legend tells of the child of the red bee hidden in the mountains when Charlemagne was hunting them down. A fairy tale? In 1999, on the private land of a certain family, a stone slab was found, a spiral carved inside a hexagon, surrounded by 5 bees. What did that family do? They kicked the researchers out and fenced off the land. But science is harder to gag. A recent genetic study identified a rare mitochondrial marker in a handful of Basque and Breton families. It didn't match anyone around them. But guess what it matched? Genetic samples taken from ancient Merovingian tombs in Amiens and Metz. Immediately after publication, the paper was retracted without explanation. Data vanished from online repositories. An anonymous researcher revealed, this ritual lineage pattern is biologically traceable more clearly than anyone expected. It seems someone doesn't want us connecting the dots. Let's go back to the north. In 2016, at Ora Church, ground-penetrating radar found a void beneath the altar, a perfectly hexagonal room. What did the local diocese say? Do not dig. Why is the church so afraid of a hole in the ground, unless they know what lies beneath it? And the creepiest story lies in Geneva, in 2005. A young scholar was shown a book with no name, no author, only the image of a bee and a spiral. The old librarian said, "This is for those who remember." Inside it spoke of the line of 9 stars, something that does not exist in mainstream history. The result? The scholar's thesis was rejected. The librarian vanished without a trace. The book never existed in the catalog, like a magic trick. Poof, gone. At this point, you might ask me, Zorro, why make it so complicated? Why hide it? The answer lies in the year 794, the Council of Frankfurt. Nearly a century after the last Merovingian king was deposed, the church still issued orders banning rituals commemorating kings not canonized, banning the resurrection symbol of the bee, banning spirals on graves. You don't pass laws to ban things that don't exist. You pass laws to ban things that threaten you. The church and the Carolingian dynasty didn't just want to take the throne. They wanted to erase an idea. The idea that Merovingian power came from divine blood, needing no favor from the Pope. That was a theological competition. And in that game, the loser doesn't just lose their head, they lose their history. So, are they still here? I believe so. But don't expect them to appear on TV and demand the French throne. The age of kings is over. Their survival is not political. It is guardianship. They are not a family tree. They are a network. The silent holders of knowledge, the protectors of shrines, the transmitters of symbols. A silent agreement to watch, wait, and remember. In this noisy world, who would notice a small bee carved on a park bench? Who would see the spiral in the logo of a major corporation? The symbols are still there, right before our eyes, and we have just forgotten how to read them. What do you think history is? Words lying neatly in textbooks or lifeless stone statues wiped clean in a museum? Dead wrong. Real history. It is much dirtier. It is like a corpse that people tried to bury in the backyard, but the leg keeps sticking up above the ground every time it rains. Go to Trondheim, Norway. A place so cold, even souls could freeze. In the 1950s, at a ruined church that God probably forgot the name of, they found something that shouldn't exist. A mosaic. Not the holy kind with chubby angels. It was in the Merovingian style. That was a shocking discovery, right? Something that could rewrite the history of Northern art and religion. But guess what happened? They filled it in, immediately. No museum confirmed it ever existed. Photos of the scene vanished as if they were never taken. Locals, they look at you as if you just asked for the formula to build a nuclear bomb. They say those symbols caused discomfort to those sitting on high. Funny, isn't it? We live in a world where a picture on the floor can make a government or a church tremble in fear. They aren't afraid it's ugly. They are afraid it's real. Leaving the cold of the north, we go south to Rennes-les-Bains. A name that sounds poetic, but don't be fooled. Under the steam of the ancient baths here, rumors circulate about something hotter than mineral water, scrolls, not electricity bills. Legends say they were written by monks serving under Dagobert II. Dagobert II, a name mainstream historians avoid like the plague. Why? Because his reign, his bloodline, contains inconveniences for the story the church wants to tell. In Rennes-les-Bains, anyone applying to excavate beneath the bathhouse floors gets the same answer: a cold silence or open hostility. It isn't just bureaucratic red tape, that is guarding. Imagine walking into the town library, asking about the scrolls, and the gentle old librarian suddenly looks at you with the eyes of an assassin. That is the feeling here. This topic has crossed the line of history. It has entered the territory of taboo. And this is where things get interesting in a crazy way. The silence doesn't just come from those in power. It comes from the very people paid to find the truth. Historians. They write books about the Merovingian mystery. The titles sound catchy. The covers are beautiful. But when you read them, hollow, circular arguments, harmless conclusions. It's like ordering a pizza, and they deliver you an empty box. Archivists, in moments of drunkenness or a slip of the tongue, swear they have seen those scrolls. They describe the details: the bee, symbol of resurrection and divine kingship, the spiral, the path inward. But the next day, when the microphone is turned on, I never said that. You misheard. It was just a decorative pattern. They are gaslighting us, my friend. Even local families, people who have that symbol carved right on their fireplace, deny it flat out. Ah, this? My grandfather carved it for fun. For fun? Who carves a heretical symbol that could get the whole family burned alive onto a fireplace just for fun. This silence is not accidental. It is not shame. It is an order, an omerta, code of silence, of the ancient nobility. In a never-released recording tape, which somehow I heard, wink, an elderly French aristocrat said a sentence that chilled me to the bone. Il y a des choses dont on se souvient mieux en ne les disant pas. Let that sentence sink into your head for a bit. There are things remembered better by not saying them. They don't want to forget. They want to hide. The question is, what the hell are they protecting? A treasure of gold and silver? No. People would have dug it up and spent it long ago. A weapon? Maybe. But the most dangerous weapon against an empire or a church that monopolizes truth is not a sword or a gun. It is an idea. Many believe the Merovingians didn't just carry royal blood. They carried a deadly concept. That kingship does not come from domination by violence, but is a divine stewardship. That the king is a function of the universe, not a political office. An idea like that could put both emperor and pope out of a job, and that is why it was buried. Not because it was wrong, but because it was too dangerous to be allowed to be right. But if they buried the idea, where did they hide the body? (1307), the year King Philip the Fair of France decided that he owed the Knights Templar too much money, so the best way to clear the debt was to clear out the creditor. The logic of kings, you know. But mainstream history stops at the pyres. Shadow history? It starts right when the fire dies down. Whispered documents, the kind you won't find on Wikipedia, speak of the survivors. Templars, Cathars, heretics. Where did they go? What did they carry? They speak of the temple, not the stone temple in Jerusalem that was razed, but a different temple, a city hidden in the sand, or a fortress hidden among eternal snowy peaks. Hollywood filmmakers love this idea. Treasure, the Holy Grail, Indiana Jones running from rolling boulders. But what if we are all wrong? What if the temple isn't a location for you to check in on Google Maps? Some researchers, those called crazy before being called geniuses, suggest that the temple is a geographical network, a giant chessboard arranged according to sacred geometry. They believe the ancients didn't build churches randomly. They placed them on the acupuncture points of the earth. Like acupuncture, but for the planet. But then there are others. Those who go deeper into mysticism, whispering a theory that gives me goosebumps. The temple is a metaphor. It implies the body, the bloodline, or a secret language. Recall the carvings in the previous part. The bee, the rose, the spiral. What if the temple is actually a people, not a place? You don't go to the temple. You are the temple. A concept like that threatens every institution. Because if God resides within your blood or body, what do you need a pope for? What do you need a king as an intermediary for? No wonder they wanted to bury it so deep. We often think, if no one talks about it, it means it doesn't exist. If history books leave a page blank, it means nothing happened. Mistake. The silence surrounding the Merovingians, surrounding the temple, it isn't oblivion. It is a security system. It is the last line of defense of sacred silence. Imagine you are holding a secret that could change the world. Would you post it on Facebook? No. You would keep your mouth shut. You bury it, not because you are ashamed, but because you are protecting it. Maybe their disappearance, the lack of records, the lack of proof, was a deliberate choice. The greatest sleeper agent tactic in history. They chose not to speak, not to publish, not to dig. They waited. Waited for what? until the time is ripe, or until a worthy person appears to listen properly. Maybe that person is me. Chuckles. Or maybe it is you. If this theory is true, then every gap in the history books, every sealed crypt, every covered-up mosaic in Norway is not a failure of history. It is a letter written in the invisible ink of absence. They are speaking to us by saying nothing at all. That is reverent silence, not ignorance. You know, in music, the silence between the notes is as important as the notes themselves. Without the silence, the music is just noise. Our history is too noisy, and the Merovingians, they are that silence. Silence may be empty to the fool, but it is sacred to the wise. Now, as you are watching this video, maybe you are sitting in your room, headphones on, eyes glued to the screen. The world out there is screaming, but try to listen. Behind every theory, every empty tomb, there is a different kind of truth. Not a scream, but a whisper, not a manifesto, but a symbol. The Merovingians didn't leave us a kingdom of stone. They left a riddle, and that riddle begins with whether you are willing to be silent long enough to hear it. The Romans built an empire with swords and concrete. Christianity built power with faith and fear. But the Merovingians, they didn't build walls to lock themselves in. They built a living myth. We often think of dynasties as long lists of old kings with lice-infested wigs, but the Merovingian line wasn't just a family. They were a story cemented in stone, blood, and memory. They ruled from the shadows of collapsing empires. When Rome burned, they were still there. When the church began hunting heresy, they were still there. They didn't disappear in fire or spectacular violence like Hollywood movies usually portray. No, their end was much quieter, much more terrifying. It was erasure. They were folded into the creases of history pages by other hands. But you know, when you fold a piece of paper, the writing inside doesn't disappear. It is just covered up. And history, my dear friend, has never been an honest witness. What if the silence isn't emptiness? In our noisy world, silence is scary. We fill it with TikTok, with podcasts, with background music. We are afraid to be alone with our own thoughts. But in ancient traditions, silence is not a void. It is a cradle. It is the place holding names too sacred to utter aloud. It is the place where truths are too powerful to declare in the town square. Think about it. If you wanted to protect a secret from an empire that wants to destroy you, would you carve it on your forehead? No. You hide it in silence. For the Merovingians, if the theories are true, then this is their legacy. Not a kingdom on a geographical map, something anyone can invade, but a kingdom of perception, a code written in geometry, in nature, in ritual. A code not meant to rule the masses, but to remember. Look closely at this. Don't look at them as decorative patterns on your grandmother's wallpaper. These are manuals for surviving through time. The bee. It doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, but it builds an entire kingdom of wax and honey. It is the symbol of sacred diligence and royal order. The rose. It is beautiful, yes, but it teaches us a lesson about protection. The rose blooms slowly, and it always hides among thorns. Beauty needs to be protected by sharpness. The spiral. This is my favorite. It doesn't lead you out into the world. It leads you inward, toward the truth. This is not art. This is ancient data storage technology. Those who carved them into stone weren't doing it to beautify the church. They were leaving breadcrumbs for their descendants. Each symbol is a syllable in a secret language, and only those who haven't forgotten how to listen with their eyes can read it. Are you seeing them, or do you only see lifeless drawings? From this perspective, their silence is not passive. It is active protection. Perhaps the Merovingians passed down more than just blood. They passed down the art of keeping safe, through stillness, through refusal to appear, through terrifyingly patient waiting. Their fall could have been staged. They let the crown fall into the mud, let the enemy take the throne, because they knew that what they held was far more precious than that velvet-cushioned wooden chair. Their deep purpose was never extinguished, because it was never fully spoken. You can't kill something you can't find, right? And this is where things get personal. You might wonder, what the hell is that truth that must be protected so carefully? An alien bloodline, divine ancestors, or an ancient technology? Maybe all of it. Or maybe it is something simpler but more dangerous. A reminder that kingship is a sacred duty, not a political tool. That the true leader is chosen by destiny and the stars, not by ballots or coups. That is a truth that our modern world, with all its chaos and greed, is craving in desperation. But who is holding the key to that truth right now? Not the kings, not the churches, but the seekers. People who don't need proof, but only need a feeling. Perhaps it is you. We will go to the bottom of this secret in the final part, where blood, memory, and destiny meet. Let's be honest with each other. Power systems, whether the 14th century church or 21st century corporations, are very busy. They don't waste time and manpower erasing meaningless things. If they work that hard to create silence, to chisel away reliefs, to burn libraries, then that is a sign of one thing only: fear. And fear, my friend, is the best metal detector for finding treasure. It reveals the value of what is hidden. The question isn't, is something hidden? Of course there is. The real question is, who is continuing to protect it now, when the knights are dead and the castles are ruins? Perhaps what remains is not for those who wear crowns. It is for those who need no throne but crave the truth. The silence we talked about? It isn't a grave burying a corpse. It is a vault. And the key is not a physical object. You have walked with me through cold tombs and crazy theories. You have seen the bees and the roses. But admit it, behind all those dry historical facts, you felt something, didn't you? Something scratching right beneath the surface of your skin. It isn't intellectual curiosity. It is recognition. Like when you hear a melody for the first time but find it strangely familiar. Like meeting a stranger but feeling like you've known them for 1,000 years. Maybe you saw it in unexplainable dreams, in the quiet spaces between two thoughts. The legacy of the Merovingians is not a dynasty to rule over you. It is a mirror. It reflects not power, but purpose. The silence is not to hide the truth from you. It is a challenge. It is asking you, do you remember what you were never taught? Do you dare to protect what cannot be proven by papers? In that sense, congratulations. You have officially become an accomplice. A part of this story. The Merovingians, according to history books, are dead. The bloodline has dried up. But what if their purpose was not to maintain a biological lineage? What if the real legacy is a state of awareness? There are those who believe this red thread is passed through DNA. But I think it is subtler than that. It is passed through attention. Those who carry this legacy might not know they are carrying it until they see a rose carved on stone and their heart skips a beat. Until they hear the story of forgotten kings and feel grief as if they lost a relative. That is when the blood awakens. Not biological blood, but the blood of the soul. You are a keeper of memory, simply because you chose to stop and listen when the whole world is racing. In a culture of noise, your attention is a sacred act of rebellion. Perhaps the true guardians never wore iron armor. They didn't hold swords. They are people like you, the observers, those who remember without knowing why they must remember. They are the future memory of the past. They are the ones preventing silence from becoming oblivion. They walk through libraries, running their hands over old book spines. They see signs on the street that others miss. They keep the spiral turning, not outward to conquer, but inward to understand. So next time you walk past an old stone church and feel the wind change direction, when you see a rose growing where it shouldn't grow, or when a strange name makes you shiver, don't walk away. Stop. Listen. The story isn't over yet. It never ended. It is just waiting for you to realize your role. Welcome to the secret society, my friend.